And as you just heard, we are recording this session, so we thank you for coming. Today we're going to hear from a current student assistant and a hiring manager about the jobs we have available at the library. Currently, we have an excellent job open. It's called the Student Assistant Program, and this program is all about helping you successfully apply an interview and get hired as a colleague of ours at the Seattle Public Library. So you'll hear from a current student assistant and a hiring manager. And you'll have a chance to ask questions about advice and get your personal questions answered. So please put those questions into chat. We have someone monitoring chat as we go along. And then at the end, we will have time for you to ask questions after we stop recording. So if you would like to ask questions in a more private venue, that's okay. Just hold on to them. We will have time at the end for that. So we do have some pictures of what it's like to work at the library. And we'll see if those can be shared. All right, thanks for sharing those pictures, and to everyone for joining us today at Hacks for Getting a Student Job at the Library. My name is Charisse. I'm a teen librarian here at the Seattle Public Library, and I'm happy to welcome you today. You're going to have lots of chances to ask questions and get some advice on how to get hired here at this awesome job at your local Seattle Public Library. So today you're going to hear from a student assistant who was recently hired, Sophia. You're going to hear from a hiring manager who started as a student assistant at the library, Lynn. And you're going to get lots of opportunities to ask questions. Please put those questions into chat. As we go, we will stop at the end of each section and answer questions. And then we'll also have a lot of time at the end after we stop recording this session if you would like to ask more questions without being recorded. So with that, let's start by talking to a current student assistant here at the library. We're going to talk to Sophia, who recently started working here at the library. Sophia, could you tell us a little about yourself?
So hi, my name's Sophie. My actual name is Sophia, but you can call me Sophie. I am 16. I'm a junior at West Seattle High School, and I started at the beginning of the school year.
Thanks for introducing yourself, Sophie. So can you tell us a little, what's this job, student assistant?
So the student assistant job is mostly processing. So it's a couple days a week, and you check in books, you shelve books, you shelf holds. It's mostly just making sure that all the books go where they need to.
Okay. So how do you spend your time?
So usually the majority of my time is that processing, but there are people who work with customer service and as librarians who will sometimes ask you to do special projects with them. So things that you might not normally do or things like new things to learn. So there's a lot of opportunity also to do things that you might be more interested in once you get the hang of shelving.
That sounds great. So a lot of different things involved in this job. It's some shelving, some books, some technology, customer service, people skills. all sorts of things. Thanks for describing that for us. Now, when you started applying for this job, what were you nervous about?
So when I read the job description, there's a lot of information in there. And so I think it was a little overwhelming. So I was worried about not having really the skills to do a good job because this was my first formal job. So I guess I was just worried with being able to do everything that was required.
Yeah, I think a lot of people probably have those same fears. So I'm so glad you pushed through and applied, and now you're in this job despite those nerves. Why would you tell someone here today? Why is this a great job?
So I think, first of all, I applied for this job because it's a student job specifically. You do some of the same things as the other people who work more hours than you, but it's easier with your school schedule and making sure that you have time to do homework. It's also really understanding that this might be your first job. So I asked a lot of questions in my first month. A lot of the questions I had to ask again and to people that I was really new to working with. But my second reason why this is a great job is because there's a really great community at the library. Um, it was pretty open to ask questions, and I'd like to think that I'm friends with most of my coworkers, so it's been a really fun place to be.
Well, that's great to hear. And I've worked with you and I enjoy working with you. So I'm glad you enjoy working with your colleagues too. And when we get a job, especially a first job, that's a huge benefit. So thanks for sharing that with us. Now, can you share a couple get a library job hacks with everyone today? What helped you?
So that's a good question. My first hack would be if you print out or you just like download the job description. And what I did is I highlighted the parts of the job that I thought that I would really enjoy or that I was really interested in. So that helps you to focus on the parts of the job that you just really enjoy doing. And I think when you're answering the short answer questions or even speaking in your interview, that helps you to just focus on the positive opportunities rather than worry about the things that you might not be able to do yet, which you can definitely learn how to do. My second tip would be to write your own resume, mostly because you can import it into the application. So it saves you a little bit of time. But also when you're writing down your experience, which doesn't necessarily have to be job experience that you were paid for, it can be community service or something that you think just contributes to you as a person. But it really helps you to think about why your experiences do qualify you for the job. So you can make a little bit more of a convincing argument.
Those are two really good hacks. Look at the job description, include it in your questions, and include those things in your interview, and then importing your resume makes it quicker. Thank you, Sophie, so much. And at this point, we're going to pause a little bit from my questions and look at the audience. Do we have any questions from the audience, Wendy?
Actually, I think we do. I was going to say no, but then one just popped into the chat. So let me see. Okay, so I have a couple of questions here. First one, do students work at multiple, oh gosh, now we have a lot of questions. Do students work at multiple different locations or just get assigned to one? So that's the first question, if anyone wants to take that.
What's been your experience, Sophie?
I can start with that and then I think maybe hand it off to Lynn for the second part. So in your application, you can select certain locations or regions that you'd like to work at. So you'll be interviewed for a job at those locations. So you will be hired at one library, but there's also opportunity to work at different branches. And then I think I'll pass it on to Lynn.
All right, Lynn, can you add on to that second half?
Sure. Everyone hear me? I think it's working. Yeah, so like Sophie mentioned, when you get hired for a home branch. So that's where you'll mainly work most of your shifts. But sometimes due to there's folks that call out sick, so there might be days where you might be asked to work at a different branch that's close by to the branch you usually work at. We have all of our branches divided in different geographical regions of the city. So you might have to work at a different branch, like down the street if they're a little short staffed. It doesn't happen very often, but once in a while it will. You also have the opportunity to pick up extra hours during official school breaks, and that's more chances to work at other locations as well. But for the most part, you do get assigned to one home branch.
All right. Thank you, Sophie and Lynn. I noticed that we have lots of
We
questions
have
rolling in.
a ton of questions. Some of them are great because I can combine them and
Okay.
answer them quickly myself.
Okay.
One person asked if you get volunteer hours for this, and the answer is no. This is a paid position, so you get money, which is great. But you can't also use that for your volunteer, like your service learning credit, unfortunately. Oh, by the way, if anyone, if I answer anything wrong, STAs or managers in the room, please feel free to correct me.
Okay.
And the second question was how old do you have to be? And you have to be 16 by, what is the date? Does anyone know?
February 1st.
February 1st.
February 1st, yeah, of
Okay,
this year.
great. Let me see. I can tell you what, I'll throw out a question to y'all and then I'll keep compiling some of them.
Yeah.
So,
Because I think some of them we will answer as we go on, especially in our
Okay.
time with Lynn.
okay.
Yeah. So what's one more?
Let me throw out how many, we are going to answer that question. You're right, we are going to answer a lot of these questions. I don't want to lose them though. Oh, Sophie, do you want to just answer how flexible the schedule is? Someone asked about flexible schedule.
Actually, I don't know, I like raised my hand. I was going to add on to that first question. So the branch that I actually live closest to is the West Seattle branch, but I work at the High Point branch. So what we had to do is Lynn and I had to talk about how I would get here to decide what time my shift would start at. So I have to bus down. So we were able to move it back like half an hour. So they're really flexible with what time you get out of school, or if you have any other conflicts, you would just have to talk to your manager about that. It's not a big like minus or anything, but it is something you just have to talk about.
Yeah, so communication with your manager going to be helpful in whatever job you have. Thanks,
I was
Sophie.
just going to add a little logistical piece to that, and there's also the factor of the different open hours that the library is open. So for instance, I know high schoolers get out of school at like 3:35, is that right? So you know, you could start your shift at 4, but then if the library closes at 6, that's just a 2-hour shift. So you might work a day that the library closes at 8. It's little things like that that, you know, will come up as you get closer to the process, but just some certain things to think about, like those are certain things to think about there. Yeah.
Excellent.
Oh, sorry. Just to add on to Lynn,
Sophie.
really quickly before we move on. When you're actually working as an STA, if you do have a conflict or you need to move your hours around, so usually it's around 12 hours a week. So you do, I saw it in the chat, you do work every other weekend, and then 1 to 2 weekdays. But if you need to move your hours around for any reason, it's flexible. So I guess, for example, right now, I usually don't work on Wednesdays. So I'm moving some of my hours from the weekend that I do work to right now. But it is super flexible. They'll work with you. It's a student position, so they are really good at respecting that.
I'm going to ask Sophie one more question from the chat that I think she'll be able to answer the best. And then these other questions, some of them we'll answer in the next section, but I just want you to know, by the way, my name is Wendy and I'm monitoring the chat and I'm not going to miss any of your questions. So we will definitely get to them. I'm blown away by all the great questions. So thank you for adding this to the chat. So one last question for you, Sophie. How has it been working in this job, balancing schoolwork and a job?
So I think that's a really great question, first of all. It is a large time commitment. You do have to, it's a job, a paid job, so you have to be committed to showing up on time and making sure that you work while you're at the job. I saw this question in the chat, so I'm just going to stick in that you do get breaks. On days that you work for a long time, you get lunch breaks. When I come in after school, I get a 15-minute break. So I personally have had enough time to do my homework, but it does mean sometimes later nights. You don't usually get to start on your homework like right away when you get to work because it's after school. I think even though the time commitment is serious, you don't work enough that it would hurt your schoolwork at all. You would just have to be pretty responsible with your time management.
Thanks, Sophie, and thanks for answering 2 questions in 1. You're showing excellent time management even right now. And Sophie, I'm sure people want to hear more from you later, so thank you for being here for the entire session and changing your schedule, and keep those questions coming. For now, we're going to move into actually how to apply for this job. And so I'm going to hand the mic over to Emily, who is going to show you how to apply.
All right, everyone. Hello. As Charisse mentioned, my name is Emily. I'm a teen librarian over at the South Park branch. I'm going to go a little into the requirements for applying. And I know some of those questions in chat might be answered by this portion. And then I'll go into a short little demo of how the application looks like online. So the first part of requirements are that online application through the neogo website. And we'll, like I mentioned, we'll go over that. And then it's also responses to some supplemental questions. And I believe it's about 6 of them. And so those, we'll talk a little bit more about those as well. Another requirement, as has already been mentioned, is that you do have to be 16 years old by February 1st and enrolled in high school or an undergraduate program, an accredited vocational school, or a GED program. Students who have a bachelor's degree are unfortunately not eligible for this program. The second requirement is having the ability to work between 12 and 15 hours a week. And this is both weekday afternoons and, as Sophie mentioned, every other weekend. I know that when school is not in session and where you're not taking classes, you are able to work a couple more hours than the 12 to 15, but that is very flexible. And again, having conversations with your manager and making sure they are aware of your interest in either taking more hours when it's like, for example, during the summer or winter breaks and stuff like that. Let's see. And then the third requirement is the ability to provide proof of school enrollment. So that could be a current student ID card, your class schedule, or your official school transcript as well. And the last requirement is, I know this was in the chat as well, is you do have to provide a personal identification. So that could be a driver's license, an ID, your birth certificate, a passport. There's a range of ways to be able to prove that. So, or even a social security card too, and that's on your first day of employment. So if you have any other questions about that, please let us know too. And then as I'll go into the job description portion, as Sophie and everyone else has already mentioned, it is important to read through the job description. There's a lot of information, as Sophie mentioned, and it's very overwhelming. But it does have a lot of the information that some of the questions that you are asking. One important detail to know is that you will not be required to submit a resume or a cover letter. It is helpful to have a resume since you have all of your information on there. And as Sophie mentioned, you can import that and saves you time from having to input that information again if you already have it. The supplemental questions you will need to respond to are at the end of the application once we log in, but you are able to see them before you even open the application. And I believe this, let's see. Yep, so as already is showing right here, these are the questions that are asked. So we have, why are you interested in working as a student assistant at the Seattle Public Library? Another one is, how will working as a student assistant help you achieve your educational and career goals? What school, service learning, and or volunteer experiences can you bring to the student assistant position? And then the other ones are, if you're a high school student, what school do you attend? And then the last portion is the section where you can choose which branches you are able to or interested in working at. And so now let's take a look at the application. And so one part here is if you don't have an account yet, you will have to create one. So you'll need an email. And one good thing to know is make sure you use an email that you're okay with an employer seeing. So sometimes I know our first email, sometimes we get creative, but since this is a job, you want to make sure you do use an email that is you feel okay with an employer seeing. And I think we might have lost the application. But so I'll keep talking once we get back into it. We can take a look at the part where, let's see. Okay, yeah. So once we're in the actual application, on the left-hand side, you'll see the different sections that you will need to fill out. And if you did import your resume, a lot of this information will already have been inputted for you. But if you haven't, you will have that information. You'll need to input it manually and go step by step. And you'll notice that if you skip certain parts, it'll highlight it in red. And like that last portion where it says preference, it's not highlighted in red, so it's not required. That's just additional. This is a application that is used for all City of Seattle jobs. So there are portions of it that you won't need to fill out, and I will talk about those as we go down. So this is just your basic info, and this is where you'll put your ID information and your name. And then the next section is work. And I know if this might be some of your first job experience, so you might be thinking that you don't have anything to fill here, but remember, if you do have volunteer experiences, this is a good place to put that. You can share about anything, whether it's volunteer that you've done at school or outside of school. This is a great place to put it. It's not just any paid opportunities that you have done. And you can input as many opportunities as you have completed. And then the next portion is education. So if you're in high school, you will be able to input your high school information. Don't worry if you put no, if you haven't graduated, it will also ask you what grade you have completed. If you're in college, you will also be able to input your info here. And then the next portion is additional. So this one, it seems like you might need to fill it out, but you don't. The typing speed and data entry is not something we require for this position. If you do speak another language other than English, this would be a good place to put that. It's a skill that you have that will benefit you in this position. So that would be a good place to input that. And then the next portion is attachments. And as I mentioned in the beginning, you do not have to upload any resume or cover letter when applying for this. It is not a required section, so you will still be able to submit the application even if you don't upload any documents. And then finally, there's the last portion where the questions. So the questions that we showed at the beginning, this is where you will be able to answer them. They also ask additional questions such as whether you worked at the City of Seattle before, if you have, where, additional questions that the general City of Seattle job application requests. But then at the end, you will see those supplemental questions. And one tip I do have about this is it is nice to be able to answer directly through this website. But one tip I have is to start drafting your questions either on a Word document, maybe doing bullet points and then going back to it, so that it does save as you go, but just in case something happens, you never know, you have your responses in 2 locations. And so as you can see, because we haven't answered anything, it's all in red. So this portion, if you don't respond to it, it won't let you submit the application. And then the last portions are reviewing your application. So you'll have a chance to get to review all your responses before you officially submit your application. So that's the final portion for that. A couple important tips that I also have are, let's see. I think I mentioned most of them actually. The one other important thing to know is that there is a COVID-19 vaccine requirement, or you must qualify for a reasonable accommodation. So that is something to keep in mind. And the most important part is that you should turn in your application by 5 p.m. on January 10th. That is a deadline, 5 p.m. So make sure you get it in before then. And so now we will hear from Lynn, an assistant manager who interviews and also hires STAs.
Okay, great. Before we go on to that, did we want to do some questions?
Oh, yes.
I have a bunch.
Oh,
But this is good because now I can sort of group them by what they're related to. So right now, I think I'm going to just ask all the questions that were related to the application. Also, I've been trying to just answer questions directly in the chat as we go. So if you don't hear me say your question out loud, 2 things. I hope I answered it in the chat. And the second thing, I'm going to make sure that when we all leave today, I don't think we are going to have your email addresses. But I'd like to leave y'all with some email address that you can reach out to if you have more questions. I'll figure out which one is the best to do that with, but this is going to go fast and there's a lot of us here. So I want to make sure after we're done, y'all will have someone to contact if we didn't answer your question. So let me see what this last one was. You know what? I've had a couple people ask me this because I think there's some people in this room that are not going to be 16 on February 1st. And I said, oftentimes, I never want to promise anything, but oftentimes we will have 2 rounds. I do not know what will happen in 2022 because we are in such a different world right now. But usually we offer, we have an application period in the spring and we have one again in the fall. I hope that we have one in the fall. So the question was, will applications be open again at the start of the summer, or are there any application dates planned for the future? Does anyone in this room feel confident in answering that? Or is my answer pretty accurate? Maybe. Usually, I think is the answer. We usually open this at least once, if not twice a year. So if you are not going to be 16 on February 1st, then just keep an eye out for future postings. So let's see. Someone asked if I'm not sure what short answers there were on the application. I haven't spent a ton of time with it, but someone asked what qualities people are looking for in the short answers on the application. Lynn or Emily, do you have any insight on that?
I do not. I'm not sure, because HR is the one who reviews all of those. I haven't heard directly from someone from HR about that.
From my experience, from the applications I've reviewed, I've actually seen a range. Sometimes people keep it really brief and some people write like a little short paragraph. I don't think it's asking for like an entire essay for each question. It's just like it's just kind of another way for us to get to know you. So I don't know if that completely answers your question, but somewhere in the middle, I think, just to I don't know if there's even a word limit on that, Emily. There's not a word limit, right?
Yeah. No. And it doesn't say a paragraph or there's no limit or anything. So.
Yeah, I've seen it from like one sentence and have interviewed that person, but I've also seen like a short paragraph and have interviewed that person. So I would say like don't put all your stress into that one little question, but you do want to think about it and be thoughtful in your answer, but don't feel like that is the determining factor for your application.
Just to jump in at the end of that, I don't know what people are looking for when they're hiring, but my strategy with the short answers was to look at my resume, or at least what I had filled in on the application, and then also look at the job description and the mission of the library, and then say, how do I connect those two? So if you're just looking for a couple examples to provide, just be like, I really enjoy community service. This is why it would be helpful in interacting with people in the library. But just use those questions to kind of connect who you are and the skills you have to maybe this job.
Well said, Sophie.
And then I have one more question for this section. Someone asked if membership in clubs would count for experience, and I actually don't know the answer to that question. I said that a volunteer position would certainly be okay.
I think if through that club you're doing other type, like it's like creating programs either for the student body or doing something. That's a good question. I want to say it would count, but I'd have to check in about that one to get a more clear answer about.
I've seen other applicants include that on their resume, just like extracurriculars and activities. I think there's a section on I can't remember on the application that has like, it's this page that has like the languages you speak and your typing speed. There's a like additional information section. So I would say it doesn't hurt to include if you're part of something that you feel like you're really involved in, like it doesn't hurt if you were to add that. That helps us get to know you a little bit better. So
actually, I do have one more question for this section. Someone asked if it's better to import their resume into NeoGov or just fill it in, each box at a time.
That might be a good question for Sophie. I haven't used that feature for importing, so I'm not sure how it would work.
I have some thoughts too, but I want to hear from Sophie because she's done it more recently.
Okay, for sure. So what I had was I did my resume in Google Docs and I just saved it as a PDF and it imported pretty easily. I think they're virtually the same thing. The reason I would have recommended writing your resume, or it's basically the same thing. It's the same information, but just so long as you write it, it helps you focus on your skills a little bit. It is the same process, but if you wanted to just focus on only the things required for the application, then I would say either one is a great option. But if you already have a resume, then it's an option to import it. There's really no difference.
And it's good practice too to put the resume together as well. This NeoGo form is the same form that even like we managers use to apply for jobs. So from personal experience, I've actually I've created a resume separately just to have a tool to refer to, but I would go through each and every section individually just to make sure that each thing got imported properly, because sometimes autofill fails us. So even if you do import it, you still want to go through and make sure each thing is saying what you intended for the what kind of information you want to come across. And then what I've done also is just like added the resume as a supplemental attachment that's not required, but to be thorough, if you want for extra credit, you can just add that as well. It doesn't hurt to include that.
Actually, I don't have anything to add then. Lynn said exactly what I was going to say. It's like an extra credit is the perfect way to put it. Not required, but why not? So
yeah, I think when in doubt, just put anything you think would be good to add or that you would like to add. I would add it and it doesn't hurt.
I would add just really quickly before we move on. or your resume. So what I did was I imported it and then I also attached my resume. So you could do either. I did both. And I brought my resume to the interview, so the information will get there at some point. I know at my school, I go to West Seattle High School, there is, I can't remember the name, but there's, if you're really stuck, there is a website that you have to do as part of the counseling program, but it will help you write a resume. And then I think Ken later on will talk about the resources that the library offers to help you write a resume. So there are plenty of resources out there if you're like totally stuck and you don't know what to do.
I think we are ready to move on to the next section. Like I said, I'm still tracking everybody's questions, and I'll have some more to ask as we go on, but if y'all want to move on to the next section, go ahead.
All right, great. So this is Ken. We're going to be interviewing Lynn, who is our assistant manager here at the High Point branch. And Lynn was a former, years ago, student assistant, started a library career that way. So Lynn, why should teens apply for this job?
Why should teens apply for this job? I think the question is, why not apply for this job? This is like, not only is this job such a great opportunity for teens and students, but it's also like a really great first job. You get to gain a real world experience. You get to work alongside other working professionals. You get to work in your community and with diverse populations. And as everyone mentioned already, it's a job that's specifically tailored to students. So there is the flexibility in your schedule so you can focus on your studies, because that's important too. As a full-time student, one of the requirements, or being a full-time student is actually one of the requirements to keeping this job, is to be a student. You can't be an STA if you're not a student. And like they were mentioning earlier, you would work anywhere between 12 to 15 hours a week, depending on the job that's posted and which location it's at. And like Sophie mentioned, you would work every other weekend and a couple of weeknights after school. Another great reason to apply for this job is you get to learn, develop, and practice skills that are transferable to other future jobs that you might apply for in your future. You get to learn how to communicate clearly and effectively, how to follow instructions and protocols and procedures. You get to practice time management with different tasks, problem solving. You get to collaborate with the team, but also work independently. And you get to do it all in a really supportive environment.
That's great to hear, Lynn. So what are you looking for as a manager? Because you hire people as student assistants and you interview them. Tell us a little bit about that, please.
So as hiring managers, like I hire STAs, but I also hire other folks that do this for, as their career. But for STAs, we understand that they just might not have as much work-life experience as other folks. It's understandably the first job for a lot of the applicants, so we don't always have the same expectations. But that being said, there's a couple things that I do look for when I'm reviewing applications and conducting interviews. I can just name a few. Like I'm always looking for someone that's genuinely curious and inquisitive and asks a lot of questions and is really eager to learn and seeks to always improve and grow. I'm looking for someone that's reliable. As Sophie mentioned earlier, this is like, it's a job, it's a real paying job, so it's a commitment. So we want to be able to count on you. STAs are very part-time compared to like the full-time staff that we have. So sometimes they feel like they're just the student or they're just the intern, but they are a vital and valued team member of our team. They're just a small piece of what keeps our big machine going. So STAs are a very important part to our library ecosystem here. I'm looking for someone who's just kind of engaged and understands what the library's mission is, and just brings a good positive energy and attitude to the team.
Great, that's great to hear. So I think we might have a slide on this next question. What branches are hiring for the student assistant this round?
Big question. I think this showed up a lot in the chat as well. It's a lot of curiosity about that.
Oh, here you go.
Yeah. So currently, so as of January 2022, there are many positions. I'll give you a little back history on that. Basically, during the peak of COVID and the pandemic, there was kind of a hiring freeze. And I don't know if this was mentioned earlier, but it's in the job description. It's a 2-year program, this STA program. So during COVID, a lot of folks were kind of actually finishing up their 2-year term. But because we were having a hiring freeze, we ended up with a bunch of vacancies that went unfilled until now. So I kind of looked at the list, and this is currently the list of the branches that are hiring. But as people leave the program, more may crop up. I think I counted, and there might be something in the 20 ballpark area right now. And so, but that number is always subject to change. But right now I will say that we do have a higher than usual amount of vacancies. As you can see, there's 13 branches on this list, but there's 27 locations total in our library system. So that's 26 neighborhood branches, and then the one giant massive central library downtown Seattle. So depending on the size of the branch and the location and how busy it may be, some branches have anywhere from just one single STA on the team to like maybe 4 at a really busy branch. And Central has like, oh gosh, I can't even remember how many STA Central has. That's where I started as an STA, but I would say there's like probably over 10 STAs. I'm sorry, I don't know the number off the top of my head right now, but there's a big number of STAs at the Central Library. A lot of STAs do stay for the full 2-year term, but some don't always due to other factors, like they finish school, so they're no longer students, so they're no longer eligible, or they move out of state for school, or they come across another career opportunity. So it's kind of unpredictable in terms, I know this was a question in the chat about like, what's the probability of getting a job, and how many positions are there and what the turnover rate is like. It's kind of really hard to predict. It's just so many factors. But yeah, there's a lot of movement. So it's always giving a chance for more STAs. And hopefully that means one of you guys that are here on this session today.
Okay, Lynn, thanks. What is the applicant pool and how does that pool work?
Cool. So we're not swimming in this pool. I would say, think of it more like a bench in sports, and you're just kind of waiting until coach calls you to go on the field. So, so the pool is a list of candidates that can be considered for being placed in a position. And for this part, I'll kind of go through the life cycle of the application. I think that might help you guys understand how this pool works. So once you fill out the application and send it off, it goes to our HR Human Resources department. And that's the department that actually does the first initial screening of all the applications. They have a selection criteria. A lot of it has to do with, you know, the job description. So that's very important. And so based on the strength of the application materials, the applicant may be invited to take a skills assessment test. We'll go over more of this later. But as you know, the bulk of an STA's job is processing and shelving and putting things in and organizing them in order. So the skills assessment is essentially kind of testing your ability to put groups of words and numbers in order. We call that alphanumerical order. So that's kind of the gist of the skills assessment. And then from there, if you pass the skills assessment, you just kind of wait. Which is kind of it's a tricky part because you don't really know how long you're waiting for. And then what happens is when there is an opening at one of the locations that you've indicated as your preferred branch, then the HR will send the hiring manager there a list of the different applicants who indicated that location as one of their preferences. So this is in the supplemental questions part of the application, where you can indicate where you can realistically be able to travel to work after school. And so I guess I could say, like, the more branches you're able to work at, the higher your chances might be of being able to get an interview. If you have your heart set on, like, here at the High Point branch, for instance, there's only one STA position here, which is the one Sophie is in right now. So, and if she said, you know, if she stays a whole 2 years, you might be waiting a whole 2 years to work here. But if you kind of throw your net out a little bit wider, you might be able to get an opportunity to work at like the West Seattle branch, which is not too far from here. So, but you also don't want to, if you live in West Seattle, you don't want to say, oh, I'm able to work at Lake City, because, you know, that's also not realistic either. So think about those kind of things when you're filling out that part of the application. Does that answer the question about the pools a little bit?
Sorry about that.
Oh.
I muted myself. Great, Nan, thank you. So can you offer some tips for success?
Ooh, I have a little list here. I can kind of go
Okay.
down. A lot of it kind of touches on what we already discussed, but I'll just kind of reiterate some of them. I would say definitely read the job description, and I would take, you know, after you read the job description, take a little time to reflect a little bit about what, you know, the kind of who you are, and think about your strengths and your traits and your skills, and how do they match up with the job description. Can you draw any parallels to that? Can you provide any examples that demonstrate that you can do similar things that of the job responsibilities and qualifications? Another tip is it's okay if you don't have a lot of job experience. We are fully aware of that when you apply. And even if you don't have a lot of job experience, I bet you all have a lot of experience in other parts of your life. Kind of think of outside the box about this. You can think about all the volunteer work you've done in your community. Think about extracurricular activities and clubs that you've been part of. Think about any really big group projects that you're really proud of and that you played a really great leadership role in. Or if you help plan a really big event, or if you like do theater and you were part of a theater production and that shows great collaboration and teamwork. And you can also include honors and awards too. That's something else that I kind of thought of, you could just throw in there. Like we said, the more, the better. Another tip I have is to just be prepared and do your research. We library folks love research. So if you can do that part, then you'll fit right in. But one big part of that is like being prepared is filling out the application carefully and making sure you're reading each section thoroughly. That shows that you can follow directions. And then also, you know, practice interviewing, go read our website, look at information about the branches you're interested in, look at all the different things that libraries offers besides just books, because we offer way more than that. Another tip I have is to just visit your local library in your neighborhood. Get to know your local librarian, get to know the staff that work there, ask questions. Maybe you can get a behind the scenes tour or something. So just kind of show your interest in this position and kind of network in that way. And my final thing is just to be yourself and don't sell yourself short. And this is your time to shine and brag about yourself when you apply for a job.
Wow, Lynn, those are great tips. Thank you so much. So Wendy, I'm looking at the clock. It's 5:20. Do we want to take a question or two, or should we move on to the next?
You know, I feel like Lynn answered a ton of questions. Also, thanks to Sophie, our current STA, has also been jumping in the chat and answering questions where I can't. Let me see. I'm so sorry if you already answered this, Lynn, but do you know what that people should expect or maybe prepare for in the interview? That was one of the questions in the chat. I know that could be a long answer, so feel free to keep it brief, and that's okay.
Oh gosh. I would say it's a pretty standard interview, but that's kind of not a great answer for folks who haven't been through many interviews before. But I think, you know, just we keep going back to this, like the job description, and then think about yourself and the things that you've done that can align with the job description. So that's kind of the best tip I have for interview preparation. In addition to all the very, you know, there's a lot of the standard, like, you know, how to dress and how to show up on time and not bring a friend and, you know, all those things. And there's tons of tips on that, but out in the universe. But for the specific library position, I think maybe just even going to the branch that you're interested in beforehand and looking around and asking questions, like even if you have an interview scheduled, for instance, you can come to the branch and say, I have an interview next week. I just want to look around and get to know this place because I'm really interested in working here. And any of the staff would be happy to kind of let you know. So I think just do all the research, look on the website, soak in all of the library things that you can. That's kind of my big tip for the interview. I know interviews are hard, they're awkward, I've been through so many of them, and even for myself, they're still challenging, but you know, it's good practice too. So it's okay to be nervous, and it's okay that if it's your first one, it's okay.
You know, one more question related to the interview. I think this is a great question. Do you think that interviews will be over Zoom or in person right now?
Actually, when I interviewed Sophie, it was in person.
Okay. Okay.
So, but I think we were given the option to do a Zoom interview. A lot of the other library jobs are over Zoom right now just for scheduling purposes, but we had the option of doing a phone interview or in person. That was the instruction we were given. Who knows what the CDC will tell us we can do or not do in the next 6 months, but currently I think that might be it's a site interview, but that is subject to change to be a Zoom and or phone interview. But that's a great question.
That I feel like that covers most of the questions related to the application and the interview. So if we want to move on to the next section, I'm sorry, I'm so distracted. I'm like reading and talking at the same time. If we want to go on to the next section, I think we're good for now, and I'll keep compiling questions.
Okay, great. Thank you all. So I think we're going to look at one of our library resources, which is tutor.com, and that can help with a cover letter resume. If you've never written one before, or you want some feedback on your cover letter or resume. So thank you right now. So we are looking at tutor.com, and that is a site off of our website. Thank you so much for showing us these instructions. So again, spl.org, going down to online resources, tutor.com. And you can log in with your library card number and your PIN number and call us if you need to refresh that. So again, this is the help that you could get, and you can submit a paper for review. So you can put in your grade level. We're going to put in adult, and what kind of help I need today? I need help with my resume and cover letter drop-off review. Okay. And then, so you select if you want resume help or cover letter help. And there you go. What are you applying for? There's different categories there. You could just put in other, might work. And then you could list in, take a copy of the job, the application, and pop that into the box there. All right. And that will give the reviewer some information to work with. And then you can also, if you have your resume already started or your cover letter already started, you could go ahead and attach that, as Shelley is doing there. And then you can submit it, and they'll get back to you. So today is the 5th. The application's due by the 10th, right? So you got a day or two to do this. So if you'd like to do this, it's 12 hours, and they'll get back to you. So you might want to pop that in the next day or two if you're wanting to apply by Monday. So if you have any questions on that whole process, go ahead and put them in the chat. And let's see, Shelley, do we have any questions at this point about tutor.com or resume cover letters?
Nope.
Okay.
Nope. Everyone seems good with that. That seems like a straightforward thing.
Okay. All right. We're running a little bit behind on time, so I guess it's time for any more questions that any of you have about anything today. That'd be great to hear. So we have some more time for that. So if you'd like to list any of those, Wendy, or I have a question here that maybe someone can answer on our panel. I've heard there is some sort of a test that is referred to on the application. After you submit your application, you make it to the next kind of stage. So what is this test about that we're hearing about? If anyone would like to respond to that, Sophie, if you'd like, would you like to respond to that question? So you filled out your application whenever that was, months ago, and then you were tested. What was the test about? What was that whole experience about?
Okay, yeah. So I am super cool with answering this question. I think at the end it would be helpful for Lynn to elaborate a little because she's on the other side of that. I also just wanted to make a note. I know somebody asked in the chat if they could ask questions out loud, and this would be the time for that. So feel free. So I submitted my application first, and then you'll get an email asking you to take the test, which is just my experience. But it was online for me. So it's essentially just a basic alphabetizing and decimal sorting test. You don't need to know super specific library things. So you don't need to memorize the Dewey Decimal System or the alphabet backwards. It's pretty simple. It is timed, so it's a little bit stressful, but I think just stay calm. I know we have some resources for practicing if somebody wants to put that in the chat. So like ordering the books. But yeah, don't stress about it. You could do some practice, but it's just to make sure that you can order decimals and alphabetize. And I'll pass it to Lynn.
I just had a light bulb pop in my head, but I thought this is something you can like even ask when you visit your local library, and we can even show it to you in person. But like Sophie said, it's basically kind of assessing if you're able to put sets of things in order, in alphabetical order, but also decimal number order. You do not need to have knowledge of the Dewey Decimal System at all. Like you don't have to know anything about the Dewey Decimal System, but you do have to know how to put numbers in order and how to put other things in alphabetical order. And if you don't, we can kind of show you if you're, just an example if that would help. Any of your local library staff would be happy to help you with that kind of thing. And I think someone just dropped in the chat a kind of example of what these organizing tests are like.
All right. So maybe Sophia, Lynn, I'm seeing some questions in here about when will we know if we've been selected to take the test? How did that kind of play out for you, Sophie?
So I was actually checking my inbox this morning to see if I could remember. So you submit your application first, and then you get an email from somebody kind of internally within the library. It's just like a mass email. I got it to the email that I put in the application. And it'll just invite you to take the test. I think it was maybe like sometime in the next month, so it's not immediate. And there's not a lot of like update that you get between the application and getting the email, but I would just suggest that you be patient because there's a little bit of silence, but you shouldn't be worried about that.
This is the point where I'll add to, once you've applied for a job, you've checked your email. I'll check it a lot. There's been times where I haven't even been able to reach out to people I wanted to interview, and I don't know what had happened there, but there was a really long time before they got back to me. But it's like, it's kind of time sensitive, so it would be good to just check your email on a regular basis. Get in the habit of that once you've submitted your application materials.
Could I offer this little bit of advice from my viewpoint? Is like, okay, it's January 10th, 5 p.m. Whew, I've done the application. I've submitted it. What are my next steps to get ready? I would personally suggest, make sure you got your social security card ready to go. Your ID is all good to go. Your student ID. Did you pick up your ID picture back in September? Oh, I forgot to do that. Let me go do that. Let me go to the school office. Any other tips, Sophie, you might offer on that?
At least for information. So once you've submitted your application, it's a little bit out of your hands. I think as we've already talked about it, I would definitely check your email. I did that a lot. It was at the beginning of the school year.
Right, so maybe at this time, what we'll do is thank everyone for coming. And we have a slide that we can put up just with some reminders to apply by 5 p.m. on January 10th. And anyone who has any more questions, what I'd like you to do is stick around. We can stick around until 6 o'clock and keep answering these questions. And what we're going to do is stop the recording. So this recording of this last hour will be placed on our website in the next 2 weeks. And so this time after the recording has stopped, you can have more privacy as you ask your questions.